Hey everyone, before jumping into the meat of this episode, I just want to warn you there are massive spoilers. So if you have not watched the entirety of Game of Thrones, do not proceed any further. Turn me off right now, please. Hey everyone, welcome to Destination Truth. And if you just finished Season 8, the season finale of Game of Thrones, this video is for you. Today I'm filming outside because I don't think I can keep my energy indoors for this one. There's just so much going on in the Game of Thrones, and if you've watched all 8 seasons and or read the books, I have not read all the books. I just started reading the books when I realized this is it. I've watched all the show. There's nothing to ruin. I can just read the books now. So halfway into book 1. Anyway. This video is for you if you want to know the deeper meaning of what's the meaning of this entire series. What's really going on? Is there something to take away from it, to hold with you for the rest of your life? And I definitely think there is. Now, if you don't watch my channel, Destination Truth, you should know that my background is largely libertarian, Christian-leaning, and freedom-loving. So if you're like me, you probably want something to kind of cleanse yourself of this huge void that Game of Thrones is leaving in your heart right about now. So maybe you're watching this video right after watching the show, and I hope you are, because that's what it's for. So if you're like me, the Game of Thrones and shows about medieval times, going back to old times, medieval times, really pull my heartstrings. They get me more emotional. In fact, to be completely honest with you, the only movie that I have cried tears to was, in fact, The Last Samurai, that Tom Cruise both acted in and produced. And this season finale, the last 2 episodes of Game of Thrones, really had me tearing up, but not crying, okay? So I don't want to waste your time. Let's get right into the meaning of what the Game of Thrones is all about. What does it all mean? So I would say basically all that's happened up until this point in the show, it's all basically lead up to building the meaning of what is really going on, adding layers upon layers and layers of meaning to this, and why this season finale is so important, what lesson it teaches you, why should it be important to you, if that makes sense. So, the number one thing, the number one takeaway that I think everyone should take from this show, first and foremost, is that the Game of Thrones, the Iron Throne, the 7 kingdoms, and ruling all of them represents totalitarianism and communism in a big way. And the wheel being the system, or the Game of Thrones and whatnot, is the rat race, or the race and competition of rulers over one another, which kind of represents capitalism. And at the end of the show, although we didn't realize it until the very end, Daenerys Targaryen represented communism, totalitarianism. And she broke all of our hearts because we thought she was good. Just about everyone thought that she might be a benevolent ruler, but she just got too angry with Cersei Lannister and the 7 kingdoms, and seeing mercy as her weakness. She just couldn't handle that. So she had to raise the entire city, proving that she can rule with fear if she needed to. So she feels at that climactic moment when she has won the city, even when the bells are chiming, she feels that it's not enough. That the people, the Lannisters and the Golden Army, it's not enough just to make them surrender. She has to demolish them so that everyone knows that she won't just rule with love, but with an iron fist when needed. So Daenerys breaks kind of in the end. In her siege of King's Landing, she realizes that Cersei was using her mercifulness as a weapon against her, and she decided she can't let that go on. Not with how hard things are going in Westeros. She needs to prove herself truly mighty, and in her conversation with Jon Snow, she says, "Fear it is," because she realizes she cannot go on being this benevolent leader in Westeros that is loved. she needs to be feared just as much as Cersei is. And she realizes that if she wants to rule the way that any Targaryen has, it has to be by fire and blood. And she cannot be this merciful leader anymore. It's just not going to work. That's basically what it seems she decides, even though everyone that was supporting her, for the most part, everyone from Westeros that was supporting her loved her and believed that she was the merciful one that the entire realm needed. They realized in the end, unfortunately, Jon Snow is right, that she was more of the same. She was part of the wheel that she was claiming she was going to break. And so what she represented in its entirety and truthfulness is she actually represented totalitarianism, tyranny, communism. Some of the quotes from her will help depict that, where she mentions to Jon Snow that fear it is, she has to use fear tactics. She also mentions the wheel a lot and having to break it or liberate it. This is like verbatim communist doctrine, believing that they liberate the downtrodden, the masses, the proletariat. They liberate them from the wheel or the system, capitalism. And so she wants to go be the breaker of chains and liberate people, but what that leads to is killing millions and millions of people. And it's said right in the show that the battle for King's Landing, where she razes the city, destroys everything, kills everyone, it is in fact far more death than any of the battles of Westeros that had been leading up to it. And so that tells you that there is more bloodshed from that than any of the battles, which, guess what? On Earth's, on this planet here that you're on, that's the fact of the matter for communism versus capitalism and all of the world wars versus communism. Communism has led to the death of more people than any war over religion or you name it, borders, etc. World War II and I, and many other wars combined don't actually compete really to what communism has been able to wrought on the planet. The USSR alone led to the death of over 60 million people. World War II didn't even hit 20 million, unfortunately, and that includes the genocide of Jews and gays, etc., by Nazi Germany through the Holocaust. And I have a controversial video I made on that, but we're not talking about that today. So going on. So it's a very hard decision for Jon Snow, but Jon Snow in the end, being the most one of the most benevolent characters in the show, realizes that Dany failed. She is more of the same, and everyone around her failed to realize that she was a Targaryen, true and true. And although Jon Snow is himself, for many moments it kept me on the cliff of like, oh, is Drogon the dragon going to side with him now? Is he going to rule? What's going to happen? Because if he was able to mount the dragon and ride that dragon, he would have been king. It was the dragon's decision at that moment to kill him, let him live, or let him ride him. And it was so interesting that in that moment, that last scene where Drogon and Jon Snow are in the king's chamber, it's a really important scene that I don't want you to overlook, because in that scene, the most important thing of the entire show happens. Drogon melts the Iron Throne, and Drogon and Jon Snow together are the true breakers of the wheel. And what the wheel represented was a totalitarian system where there's a honeypot, a system for ruling the whole world, a capitalist a globalist system designed to rule the whole continent. And that system clearly had not worked for a long time. Now that brings me to my second point, which is very libertarian in nature, which is one of the other most important parts of the show, which is that Sansa Stark is the strong character in the show that says the North is too big and has suffered way too much to be ruled over by a southern kingdom anymore. We need to become a sovereign country again, as we were for hundreds of years. This represents the dismemberment, the coming apart, the discombobulation, and the fractionation of peoples people should be free to govern themselves, a very libertarian ideology. And so she basically is one of the strongest rulers in the whole show that decides that she should be a sovereign country. And what I had hoped would that she would have led the way, and other kingdoms would have said, you know what, we're going to be sovereign too, and we're all going to work together and see if we can basically all be sovereign nations. But it doesn't need to be so, because the land continent kind of works the way that it goes in the show. So George R.R. Martin, I think, was wise, or at least the show was wise, to choose just the North. The North is so vast, it's mentioned in the books, that it's just too big to be really ruled, because it's about as big as all of the other 6 kingdoms combined. So it really doesn't need to be ruled by the South. It's really its own kingdom. So I think this stands for very libertarian beliefs, that men should be free to govern themselves, and that there should not be a totalitarian system that's, super far away, kind of like the UK was to the United States for the Revolutionary War. You cannot do taxation without representation. If the southern kingdoms are not giving to Winterfell in the north, then what do they have to gain from the south? So these are very libertarian, even very American ideas. And so I want to get even more into the American ideas part here, because I think something really profound happens in regards to how everything kind of comes apart, and how they choose Bran as a king, and how in the end scene, when they're choosing a new king, not the very end scene, but nonetheless, when they're choosing a new king, they decide to go with someone who will not have heirs, and they choose that all the rulers will no longer be ruling by blood or by a monarchy, but by merit. So America is renowned for being one of the most stark meritocracies in the world. And stark means strong, by the way, if you didn't already know that. It's literally like translated to the word strong in German. So I think it's very interesting that the show basically has a laugh at true democracy in that scene as well, where Sam Tarly says, why don't we let everyone choose? And everyone thinks about it, and then they laugh. And it's funny because they don't go into it too much of why that's such a silly idea. But in reality, what we know from history is that true democracy sadly is somewhat idiotic, because the masses are too easily persuaded by money, meaning you can pay people for votes. Literally, you can bribe people that are not doing well, the lower class and middle class, fairly easily. So you don't want to have a system where true democracy is the case, because Democrats, or whatever political party or political system that has enough power to do so, will end up buying votes by creating a welfare state or whatever. So I think that's really interesting that they don't even dwell on it too much. But true democracy, where everyone has a say, is almost just laughed off in that scene. And I thought that was really profound as well, actually. And then they come to the conclusion that a representative government is the best way, and people will basically be elected or chosen. So it's basically making a huge decision that an American form of government is perhaps the most benevolent and most effective, although obviously it's not saying it's perfect. If anything, the ending of this show shows that nothing is perfect, because nobody's perfectly happy. There's a compromise. You have to compromise. For everyone to be happy, you have to compromise. And right now in the United States, we see a lot of people not wanting to compromise anymore. The left and right are at odds with each other. And I wish more people were familiar with more libertarian ideology, because libertarians don't give a hoot about Democrats or Republicans, because they're all the same. And that's not for this video to jump into, but if we get into looking at globalists, you'll see there's a lot of sameness between Democrats and Republicans and how they vote. Another quote from Daenerys Targaryen that kind of proves that she's now representing communism, totalitarianism, and tyranny is the quote, "They don't get to choose," when Jon is basically begging her, you have to let Tyrion Lannister go. you have to forgive them, you have to rule with mercy, and if you don't, and how do you know what's good and evil? Like, why, more of this. He was the one that said, if you don't let the people in King's Landing live, if you kill them all to take it, you're more of the same. And then she did all that, and he realized she's more of the same. And then when she said that quote of "they don't get to choose," he knew he had made a huge mistake of supporting her, that she was more of the same. So that was a very sad moment in the show, because, I mean, let's face it, all of us really wanted them to be some dream couple that lived happily ever after and ruled benevolently, because Jon was really good and Dany seemed really good up into that last moment. So it was kind of heartbreaking for all of us. So guys, it's heartbreaking to see a lot of what happened in the last 2 episodes. It really is sad, but it teaches a more profound lesson to show that tyranny and rule by monarchies, tyranny, authoritarianism, communism is not the right way, and it creates a cyclical nature that is just more and more and more of death and wars that just perpetuate for a long, long time. And what I think we can learn from it are that smaller organizations of human beings is better ran for the people in that place. So nationalism is not a bad thing. Having nations, sovereign nations, is a good thing for the people in them. It makes them happier, and they're less likely to be ruled and unhappy by some foreign invader or some country far, far away like the UK. I'm relating this to Americans because it's largely for Americans, but there's examples that we can take from all over the world as well, especially South America and Africa, where there's tons of colonies from Europe. And, it's not always true in the sense that some of these countries kind of fell apart after their colonizers left. But I think for the modern world, what George R.R. Martin was really telling us is that, one, communism is a terrible system, and basically pure democracy or pure monarchies are terrible systems. What you really want in the world are smaller sovereign governments that can rule themselves in a more peaceful manner and not have to basically be ruled by foreign countries far, far away, and that people should be able to have representative government, because true democracy is not a great idea, and neither are monarchies or communism, neither. So I think this whole show is a huge, huge, huge win for libertarians. So if you're a libertarian, pat yourself on the back, because you figured out what George R.R. Martin did. I think he's on our side, honestly. And again, these books are not technically over, so his last book could be crystal clear about what he was really trying to teach us, and I could be completely wrong. But from what I've seen, I think this is the most logical, valuable meaning we can extrapolate from this show. So to summarize, remember that this show represents that communism and totalitarianism leads to the deaths of far more people than small squabbles over borders or assassinations, etc. And additionally, rule by selected representatives is actually better than true full democracy and monarchies, because in either one of those you have tons of problems. And so Drogon the dragon, I think, is the hero of the show in the long run for me, because a lot of the other characters are really like just little cogs in the wheel. But it was Drogon the dragon that was surprisingly the one that made one of the most important decisions to melt the Iron Throne and basically end the previous system of having monarchies constantly fighting over who will be king, who will be ruler. Instead, they have a new system where they have delegates, people that are elected. And I don't think it's a mistake that Bronn's hair looks extremely like a Caesar. Many of the Caesars from ancient Rome looked like that. And if you don't know, the United States was founded by men that thought that Rome was one of the best forms of government, and that's why Rome, the Roman Empire, was one of the longest living empires, and the American Empire is the second longest living empire now. So we will see if that remains the case in this modern world. I have to apologize and actually say that Chinese empires technically lasted pretty long. So I don't know. I guess I'm not including Chinese empires. Sorry about that. If you're Asian, I apologize. I don't know Asian history nearly as well as European history. So nonetheless, tell me what you guys think. I really want to hear what you guys think. Tell me if you think I'm full of shit. What's the meaning of Game of Thrones, huh? This is what I'm getting out of it. I think it's really meaningful and a beautiful show that really teaches this crazy lesson by the time it's all said and done. And you know, the fate of all these different characters, I don't think has a ton of meaning because it's not from the writing of George R.R. Martin. Like Arya Stark going off and being a sailor, discover like Christopher Columbus. Not a very meaningful way to end the show, because that means that's the beginning of the rest of her life. It's just the beginning of something great. I think one of the people that got to die in the best way was actually the Hound, Clegane. I'm forgetting his last name, but Gregor Clegane. Yeah, he finally got what he was looking for his whole life, so I'm happy for him. But otherwise, pretty sad ending for most of the characters, guys. So, yeah, I think the most important thing that happened was basically the breaking of the wheel that Daenerys thought she was breaking, but she was actually just more of the wheel. She was representing a wheel of more and more fighting over who's king or queen. And obviously, I haven't read all the books, and I know that the Targaryens ruled for a long, long time in Westeros, so she thought she was the proper ruler, but it wasn't always the case. It was not always peaceful, and so by melting that Iron Throne, Drogon, the dragon, kind of made the best decision in the show. And if the dragon killed Jon Snow, it wouldn't have changed anything, because Jon Snow is just gonna go up and like live way up in the north beyond the wall, because I think the Night's Watch is letting him go. I think he's just gonna go settle up north with the wildlings. So weird ending for him. I guess I'm kinda happy for the Lannister twins, because they got to die together, and that's all that matters, you know. They needed to die, but the way they finally died was not satisfying. I think we all wanted to see Arya Stark kill her. I think that's what we all kind of wanted. Or she got burned by a dragon or eaten by a dragon. I don't know. But none of that really matters. What really matters is the takeaway. What you take in your heart with you for the rest of your life from watching this long, long, amazing show is that totalitarianism doesn't work, guys. And sorry for making this so long, guys, but I want to make this hit home now in our modern time. So I'm going to make some parallels with what's going on in the world around us. Canada, the United States, and Europe, the Western world that created modern civilization for all of the world. Sorry, no matter where you're from, but most of the technology kind of came from the West. And basically what's happening in the West is this huge push of people towards communism and totalitarianism, and because they want safe spaces, because people are weak. We've gone through this giant cycle of people that are, to quote myself and many others, there's a cycle that exists, which basically, hard times, starting in the beginning, hard times create strong people. Strong people create good times. Good times create weak people. That's where we are right now. Weak people create bad times. And this is where we are in the circle of kind of civilization on this planet, in my opinion. And I believe that a lot of Westerners are literally slowly pushing themselves towards communism because they want the government to basically take care of them, because they're too scared of other people, what other people might do. They're just scared of real life, basically. And I understand those fears, I really do. But just because there's a few crazy people out there does not mean you should have the right to institutionalize anyone you want, or throw them in prison because of what they say, or take away their God-given rights just because because you're uncomfortable with people having guns, for example, because guns kill people. That's not true. People kill people. A gun has never killed someone without a human being somehow being involved. Guarantee it. So it's just tragic that we see what's going on in the world leading to a push towards communism and totalitarianism worldwide. And I really wish I could talk to George R.R. Martin now that this is all finally said and done and ask him what his beliefs are. Was that what the meaning was behind the show? Did he want us to understand that he sees a push towards totalitarianism, and he wants to make sure people understand that that's not the path. It's better to stick with something that's a little bit muddy and have to compromise. Is that what he's trying to tell us? Because I think it is. So sorry about all the surrounding sound here, but thank you for watching. I think this has been a profound video for all of us, because a lot of what I just told you, I was only all right, well, I think that basically summarizes everything, and thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a like and subscribe to future videos, because I like to talk about interesting things such as book or movies or TV series like this. So thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something from the video, and you gain something that you will take with you for the rest of your life. And please, again, drop a comment below. Tell me if you think I'm full of shit, or if you agree. Tell me what you think, and talk to your friends about it. What do your friends think? I'm curious too. Let me know. Anyways, guys, take care, have a good night, and always remember to find the truth and be the change.
And thanks for watching, guys. Have a good night.